My name's Jill Rowe, and in this episode of The Different Podcast, I talk with Steve Chalke about grief and loss. We acknowledge that this is an experience that we all go through and is such a part of the roller coaster of life. We know joy and pain, loss and gain, celebration and sadness. So together we chat about how we can navigate all of this, helping one another from what can feel like utter lostness to discovering hope. From the different elements of grief, the wisdom of Psalm 23, all the way to creating legacy, this was a very tender and important conversation. Hello, Steve.
Good evening, Jill.
Good evening.
Yeah.
There's a giveaway.
Is it a good evening?
Yeah,
it's definitely an evening.
It is definitely an evening.
It's a good one.
How's your day been?
My day's been, ups, downs, roundabout, etc., etc.
Yeah.
One or two good opportunities, one or two good conversations, a bit of a breakthrough here, a bit of a breakthrough there, a bit of a setback there. All the
normal.
Yeah, all the normal, round and round.
Yeah.
You just got to hold your hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Steve, I thought it would be great for us to talk about the whole experience and area of grief and loss together, because just recently you've lost and we've lost friends who've died, but also really mindful that loss it's not just when someone dies, is it? It takes many forms. And the last conversation I had about this was today at 11:30 in the office. And then on Friday, I had a conversation where one of our leaders in education was asking me to go and do some training for 50-ish of our staff around this. So it's a thing, isn't it, that's ever present for all of us.
It's ever present. First of all, organisationally, an organisation, a movement, the size of Oasis with over 6,000 staff now. And then there's all the parents of kids in our schools and all the children that are in the schools, and then our youth clubs and our housing projects, etc., etc. And then there's Oasis work in other countries. There are 9 other countries that Oasis works in. The reality is, for a long time, for me, I often say to people, grief and loss is part of every single day.
Yeah.
When you consider there's only 365 days in a year, and there are, somebody calculated a few years ago, I don't know how they did it, but they did a serious piece of work in Oasis that said we were in touch with the same 27,000 people every single day. These people we actually knew rather than people we bumped into.
Random.
I'm sure it's more than that now. But the truth is, on every day, someone's being born, someone's dying. Yeah. Someone's finding out that they have terminal cancer. Somebody's finding out they have a serious illness. Somebody's in an accident, etc., etc. Somebody's celebrating a birthday. Somebody's celebrating an anniversary. Somebody's on top of the world because their football team just, won the FA Cup or something like that. We're recording this a week before the FA Cup and somebody's going to win it and someone's going to loss and joy all go together at the same time. So this is part of everyday life. The other thing I'd say is that you asked me how my day went. The truth is that people will ring me and tell me about the most terrible situation they're in. And then 15 minutes later, someone sends me an email or rings me about the most joyous situation. So you step from one room into another and your emotions are trying to catch up so that you really do celebrate with the person who's celebrating without forgetting the person that you are just suffering devastating loss. It's a
heady, strange fact of life, isn't it?
It's bewildering.
It is. It is. And navigating all of that. And, that loss can take, like you say, it takes so many forms, doesn't it? Like, someone in your family moves away or, I'm thinking about there'll be parents who's, maybe they've got a child who's going to go off to university soon, or the dog sadly died, or like loss, just, someone goes to prison, like it's just endless, isn't it? And holding that and all the joy and all the new beginnings that there are.
Yeah.
And that's, and that like just replicates in every individual how grief shows up, doesn't it? Because
I may have told you the story before, but it's one that I'll never forget. And it's of some years ago when my wife, Cornelia, had just been told she had breast cancer. And she'd actually gone into hospital for an operation. And the operation was taking place on a Saturday. But on that Saturday, I was marrying a young couple that Corny knows.
Yeah.
And at the same time, a friend of ours called Jackie had gone into hospital because she also had cancer. She had ovarian cancer. Cornelia had breast cancer. So I found myself with my wife in one hospital having an operation, with Jackie, my friend, in another hospital. And instead of being in either place, Cornelia had said, there's no point in you coming because I'm going to have an operation. I'm going to be out of it. Yeah. So she said, go and do the wedding. So there I am, standing with a young couple in front of me. And because, I'm a reverend kind of thing, I know the words of the wedding service. So I say to this young man, who I know and love, will you take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife, to have and to hold, for rich or poor, in sickness and health, etc., 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 until death parts you? Yeah. And he says, yeah.
You're like, he's got no idea.
Absolutely not a clue. And of course, his wonderful bride repeats the same words. So they both pledge that for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, in the tough times and the good times, whatever they walk through, they will be faithful and walk with one another until they are finally parted by death. And they're both 25 or perhaps 24, I can't remember. And I'm saying these words, and I'm at the same time simultaneously thinking, you cannot have, it's not because of deficit in you, not because they're wonderful. It's impossible for you to fathom the depth of this outrageous commitment you're just making to one another, and know the pain that you will encounter and will inevitably come to you one way or t'other through life, not just with losing one another, but in the joy and the struggle of raising children and family around you and your neighbours and your friends. Life is full of complexity. Pain and sorrow and celebration.
Yeah. So when I'm doing the work for us in Oasis, I always try and draw on those elements of grief that you experience. And it's really interesting when you're talking to people about, denial and anger and bargaining and sadness and acceptance, and how that is a complete mishmash, that you can feel that in 15 minutes, all of that. And then, half an hour later, you're stuck in an element of sadness, and just, it's so messy. It's so messy. But when I'm describing to people how those experiences of grief show up and how they're characterized, it's really strangely so comforting to see that what people are finding in that explanation, and it's the work that was done by Kubler-Ross all those years ago, is they're finding a way to just navigate the experience and know that they're not losing the plot.
Yeah.
Because I think for so many people, when you're in loss and you're going through grief, you feel like you're, crikey, this is bonkers. Like, I feel completely adrift.
Yeah, whatever you feel. So I'm used to, as you will be in my job, people who feel grief intensely. And, I often say, because it's true, that grief is part of love. It's not separated from love. Because you love, you feel grief.
Yeah.
But in saying that, you've also got to remember very carefully that some people don't feel a deep sense of grief and then feel odd because they don't feel it.
Yeah.
Because people around them are crying and breaking down and can't carry on, and they feel, oh, I'm cold.
There's something wrong with me because I'm not doing
I'm not feeling any of these things. And grief hits you in different ways at different times and in different timescales. So I remember when my dad died, which was years ago, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and the depression, the kind of aching emptiness rather than a depression.
Yeah.
That's how I describe it. The aching emptiness of it went on and on and on and on for, I always say, a good 6 months. It was probably longer, I don't know, but it just was relentless, and I couldn't surface. It was like I was submerged and I couldn't get out of this thing. When my mum died some years later, actually, I took it all in my stride.
Yeah.
I mean, she was in her 90s and she'd been ill for a little bit, not excessively ill at all. But my biggest fear for her was that she was going to go on for years and years and years at the level of pain that she now had because of her back and all sorts of, and she was losing her memory badly. And then she died suddenly, but was rescued from all of that.
Yeah.
But I realised in it all that she was rescued from that, as well as being into her 90s before she died. So it was a completely different experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her loss was a great loss, but I wasn't plunged into the emptiness that I felt when my dad died, which was 20 years beforehand.
Yeah. So you say it took, I'm reflecting on losing my mum. How old were you when you lost your dad?
I was 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When losing mum and just myself, and then thinking particularly about how long it takes to get to that place where you imagine that that there can be a new reality, you know, and which often gets described as this acceptance piece. And I often say to people, I had a box of my mum's clothing and her shoes. Now, I was never going to wear any of it. It's not my style. But I held
it's probably
on.
Back in fashion now, Jill.
Probably could have made a fortune. But I held on to that. But it was in the roof, so it was in the loft space for probably 4 years.
Yeah.
Which is, and now I look back at it and I go, how, like, what?
Yeah.
But actually, in the moment, you're holding on to that, aren't you? Because you're like, I don't want to.
No.
Somehow it's like, if I let that go, then I let them go. And then you come to a place where I can let that go.
Yeah.
I can free that up now. So I think you have to approach that whole journey with huge tenderness, don't you, towards yourself?
Towards yourself and to others.
Yeah.
On their own journey, rather than stipulating how they should respond or not respond, because every person reacts differently.
What are some of the ways you've seen people respond to that?
Well, I was just going to say sometimes in quite destructive ways. So, you know, families notoriously fight over the possessions of their parents' house, over the will.
Yeah.
Do you know? And they end up arguing over a picture or a photograph, or a family who ended up arguing over some LPs. Do you even know what an LP is? Long players, 33 1/3, and like it's truly, and the siblings, none of them involved, and any means of playing any of these LPs, long players, at the time. And even if they did, they wouldn't have wanted to. I can remember one was by a song by Jim Reeves. Yeah, I
thought you were going to say the Spinners or something.
And all that kind of thing. But they fell out about it.
Wow.
Yeah, they fell out about, and one accused the other of taking some of the LPs that they'd all had on a shelf I think, for years and years, and nobody took the slightest bit of interest. But as you say, it's like, I can remember that from my childhood now, and it's a way of hanging on to my home and comfort and my mum and my dad, and those evenings that I listened to this when I was 7 and probably hated it at the time. But
it's about
now
more than the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so it's all about an emotional, spiritual journey, isn't it? That you make your way through, and it's like a desert place that you make your way through to a land of hope. And when you can release yourself,
one of the so helpful. One of the things that when I'm just trying to listen in to people when they're talking about their journey, and that is to help them think about that idea of over-functioning and under-function. I don't know if you remember, during COVID, we had some people who, outside they basically cleaned, they were hoovering their lofts, weren't they? They were like, everything was extreme.
Yeah.
We were in this shared grief loss experience. And for some people it was, everything got tidied, everything got cleaned within an inch of its life. People's cupboards were lined up. If they got tins, they were all lined up alphabetically. Do you remember that? Like, everyone started doing their bookcases in colours, didn't they? And
a rainbow.
Yeah. It was all over function, and that's a mechanism to control, because you can't control the experience of what's happening. And then for others, we might under function, where it's like we needed every day to be a duvet day. And that's how some people will bring control to their loss that they're experiencing. And I think that for some people is really helpful to just go, oh no, that's okay, that's why I'm doing that. And again, that's just part of the normal trying to make sense of the experience.
Part of the roadway, part of the path. Yeah. So for everybody else to not step in with judgment. One of the things I've found through the years, people will often say to me, oh, Steve, you're good, because they say, oh, it's because you're a pastor, it's because you're a reverend. And all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, and you're good with death, and you're good with struggle and suffering and pain. And actually, it's nothing to do with that at all. It's just that I know that what happens in life is somebody's struggling with whatever it is. It might not be, it might be the breakup of a relationship, a divorce, the loss, all sorts of loss. And nobody quite knows what to say, so they don't say anything. They don't know what to text, so they don't text anything. They stay out of the way, and then they fear, they're in grief. They probably don't want to hear from me. What would I say? And they've probably got family, and there's probably someone else, and I'll be getting in the way. And so we come up with all sorts of reasons why we shouldn't get involved. And what I always say to people is go first. Get on with it. Send a little, think about what you're going to send by a WhatsApp, but say, just thinking of you. Are those words right? Perhaps I should say, I'm praying for you. I'm thinking of you. Or am I just thinking of you? Should I say something encouraging? Don't bother with all that. Just say, I'm thinking of you.
And I always think, don't you think, Steve, in those situations, if you do call someone, they will decide for themselves whether they're going to answer the phone or not. They'll decide if they're going to respond in text or not.
They can see your name come up, whatever it is. So they know. But just to be there, and when you are there, don't stay too long. But show up, and don't say too much, and don't come out with any great pearl of wisdom, because the point is just to be there, to go see someone, to sit with them.
In your own journey, your own experience, and I'm thinking about when, you lost your dad and many other dear friends and what have you over the years. Do you have particular things that you do to help you navigate that journey? So for me, I write that, a real kind of source of trying to ground myself and make sense of loss, whatever that loss might look like, whether it's a person or a situation, a challenge, a complexity. Writing is like, for me, is a bit of a healthy way through.
Yeah, I think I do write. I have to write more things.
One of your favourite things, Steve.
No, but what I do, I think, if I'm honest about it, which I hope I'm always being, but I think that loss spurs me to action. You could word it differently and say, I do things, but then people say, oh, you're doing stuff to cover up. You know? But I don't think I am. I think it reminds me, this loss, for whatever it might be, that I have agency. And because I've got agency, i.e. breath in my body still, then there are things that I can do, to either bring support in that situation, but, it may be, well, a story, it's not a story, a sad reality of a young woman I know who's really struggling at these last few weeks. She's never been, and I was going to say she's never been loved. That's not true. She has been cared for, but she was never cared for by the people who should have cared for her. She's been, and she kicks out all over the place as a result of that. So today, one of the things I've been involved in with renewed energy, I've been working at for a long time, is I'm working on a project to set up a children's home, because I know that many children who suffer loss don't get adopted, depending on their age. You get adopted into a family if you're young. The older you get, the tougher it gets, and you get fostered, and then you get older, and then you can't be fostered. It's harder to get fostered, so you end up in residential care of some sort. So I've been working actively today on a children's home we are setting up, but not an institution, but as close to a family home as you possibly can get. Yeah. Now, that's my way. So even as I'm doing that, I'm thinking about this other situation. So it's my way of saying...
You're processing.
I'm processing it. And I'm saying, well, I can sit here and mourn that first situation I've just told you about, and I do mourn it, and I can take action to see that this doesn't happen again to someone else. And tragically, it will happen again to someone else, but you're making a dent.
There's and therefore, what I am going to do.
So I've spent a lot of my life like that. I've seen terrible things. I truly have, which in a strange way has been a privilege, because it's a sobering moment when you witness suffering and you're there and you see things that you can't comprehend. But years and years ago, right at the start of Oasis, I invented this scheme called Christmas Cracker.
Remember it well.
Where we ran.
Loved it.
Yeah, and we raised millions of pounds over a few years with youth groups across the country getting involved. One of Oasis' first projects. But it was born on an aeroplane trip, because I'd been to India. This was before Oasis worked in India, but my dad's Indian, so I'd been asked to go and speak by the YMCA in India. So I go to India, to Delhi first of all, and then to Bombay, Mumbai as it's called now. And in both places I see such agony and suffering, people dying on the streets and in the slums with nothing, with no hope. I witnessed a young baby dying in its mother's arms, and I knew that a sugar salt solution it would have, the cost 5p,
changed everything.
would have given them life. So they were totally dehydrated, and there was nothing. And I witnessed this baby die in a mother's arms, and out of all that agony, I got on the plane to come home after being there for 3 weeks, and I was like, my head's just exploding with this loss. And on the plane on the way home, I thought, I know what I could do. I could write. There you go. And I get a magazine article. And we could do, I don't quite know where the idea came from. Bits of it came from different places. And this idea took off, and then hundreds of
it was amazing.
Youth groups across the country began raising money through running temporary restaurants, which we called Christmas Crackers, because we ran them at Christmas time, and literally raised over a few years, millions of pounds.
And then radio stations.
Yeah, and then radio stations as well to follow on. But it came from seeing that pain and me asking, so how do I respond? You see, I'm a bit of a doer, aren't I? That's kind of my problem.
Well, no, it's not. It's not a problem. And I think it's again, one of the things when I'm doing the training for people in Oasis and helping our principals and community leads and everybody think about this, one of the things we do in the training, myself and shout out to Paul Woodman, is we talk about Psalm 23, which is, it's an amazing psalm, isn't it? This song, this poem, these lyrics, and we just break it all down and we get, green pastures, still waters, and just all the psychology that sits behind that, the therapeutic nature of those colours, for example, and how you can understand this notion of being calmed and being in a place where there's stillness and you can find peace, even though you walk through the valley, even though there's this presence. And then it gets to the end where it says, and I'll lay a table in the presence of my enemies. And when we talk about that, we show a picture of a big meal table, like the ones you remember in Grenfell.
Yeah.
And it's the one, at some point, Steve, we'll talk about We Are United and, this campaign that you're launching at the moment. And you think about all the community meals and the iftars and the celebrations and all of that we hold where we lay a table. And all of it is a declaration of we're laying a table where we realise we're one in the face of the enemy of injustice. And I'm thinking when you talk about you saw that experience, and you felt that experience, you lived that experience of that child dying in its mother's arms, in the face of that enemy of death, what you did was you got on the plane, you said, it's not going to win. We're going to do something. And I think we can do that all the time.
Yeah. And I see that played out lots of times, as we work in communities across the country. I see endless times that a mother who's lost a child, and that might be they've lost them to knife violence, or it might be that their education's been lost because they are dyslexic, for instance, and nobody ever paid attention. And their child struggled all the way through education, or, because they're autistic somehow, whatever. But I've seen literally, I'm not only seen, I know of, I could take you to mums, particularly mums, but mums and dads and grandparents, because of what happens to their child. They do something about it. So they set up a little foundation and they go into schools and they bring this message in, or they set up these classes, and it might be to do with sport or art or cooking or whatever, but they want to offer hope into another child's life. They set up a little charity and et cetera, and some of them become more famously known than others, but there are literally thousands and thousands of these things, and they're all beautiful. I think they're all beautiful. Actually, I was talking to somebody from government today about this, and because I was talking about the fact that we need reform in that area, because there are all these beautiful local people doing these extraordinary things because they've known the pain and they live in the community. And what government systems, it's the systems want them to do, is fill in audit reports and comply and oh, it drives you. Well, I'm going to swear if I'm not careful. It's so, the way I often put it to this government person is, we say it takes a village to care for a child, to raise a child, just before we leave the village out completely, because we only like formal stuff. You've got to fill in the forms, and you've got to comply, and you've got to produce your audits, and show your accounts for the last 18 months, and you've got to hand them in on time to the charity commissioners, but you could take those wonderful people at the charity commission and stick them in front of a group of kids and ask them to do an activity with them, and they die in the process. Here are these wonderful people driven out of love because the because of the suffering they've been through.
Absolutely.
And we count them out.
Yeah.
We count them out because they're not professional accountants. They're not supposed to be professional accountants. They're people with hearts full of love, working through their grief and turning their grief into something wonderful.
Yeah.
For others.
Yeah. So that's it.
It's alchemy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. In the presence of the enemy, you go, no, we're going to create a legacy which stands up to what that is.
Yeah, create a table.
That's not the way it needs to be. No. It can be different. And I think of that, that Jewish practice, and we see in the, stories of Jesus where he was with his dear friends and he wept with them in their grief. And that Jewish practice, isn't it, of just sitting with people in their point of grief. And then I guess what we can all do, Steve, is then, like you do, is walk with the people who are bringing their response, who are trying to birth that legacy, which is full of hope.
Absolutely. Pain, sit in the valley of the shadow of death. And there you learn, don't you? You don't rush out. You don't try to negate the situation you're in, deny it, disguise it. But in and through that pain, though you'll walk with a limp coming out the other side, you'll also walk with purpose. It's a matter of time, a matter of healing. And who knows how much time it is in any one case.
Thank you, Steve.